Hello, this is Craig Mertens, Director of Product Education for Inktober, the parent company of GraphicsFlow, Inksoft, and Printavo. Welcome to the webcast today. Today's webcast, I wanted to do a topic about direct-to-film and hybrid digital transfers. We have just seen an absolute explosion in interest in this new technology. And honestly, I think it's transforming our industry. You know, having the ability to create a heat transfer that has excellent wash durability, that looks great, it's bright and vibrant, and also that with low minimums and priced right, and you know, it's kind of a dream come true. And I know there's a lot of other kind of semi-promising technologies over the years that have attempted to do this. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about them first. Yeah, I remember being at it's now the Printing United show, but back then it was the SGIA show with my dad, and this would have been maybe circa 1997 or 98, somewhere around there. And it was the first time I ever had seen a direct-to-garment printer. And it was at the time, really the first printer to appear on the market was from a company called Mamaki, who's still kind of a leading edge developer of digital printing devices, and has actually recently introduced a dedicated direct-to-film printing printer, which is I believe the first major reputable manufacturer to come out with a direct-to-film printer. But I remember sitting there looking at this thing with my dad, and I just looked over at him. I said, "Dad, you know, I don't understand. What's the big deal being able to print directly onto a t-shirt?" And, you know, we came from a printing background. And my dad said, "Craig, you know, when we did these full color prints using simulated process printing in our screen printing business, you know, we'd pay $500 to $1,000 for the color separations. We'd have to do 2 or 3 press checks to make sure everything was registering right and that it was printing. And, you know, if we didn't get an order for at least 300 pieces, we couldn't even afford to set that up. Now you can just send a photo from your printer to a t-shirt printer, and it's just going to print out the same kind of, you know, thing." And I was like, it kind of dawned on me that the world of apparel decoration was about to change. But then after that, I remember my dad saying, you know, it kind of seems silly to be printing this directly to a t-shirt if somebody would crack the idea of being able to create a digital heat transfer that was capable of being printed on cotton and polyester and blends and light or dark substrates. He said they could, quote, write their own ticket. And that's what DTF is. That's what hybrid digital transfers are. It was they cracked the code, so to speak. We've seen other technology, for instance, like roll and print and cut, where you would print solvent inkjet onto a vinyl material and cut around the parts that you didn't want to keep and peel out basically a sticker on a t-shirt. It's good technology, very heavy-handed. There's still weeding involved. We saw the white toner, you know, kind of the craze of the white toner printers. Talked to a lot of clients that have the white toner printers from a variety of resources. Pretty mixed reviews, mostly negative. We do have clients that are successful doing it, but they've kind of, you know, made sure to become an expert and really learn the process. It's a multi-step process. You have to marry up a white underbase transfer with a color transfer. It's time-consuming. There's a lot of room for error. The transfers are kind of heavy. They're expensive. It's slow to print. You have situations where you end up with, you know, not necessarily awesome wash durability. At least the transfers that I haven't washed great. And so that was kind of the last most promising technology. You've seen other things on the market. You know, there was Sawgrass had a transfer technology for a while where that you could inkjet onto transfer paper and then contour cut around it and create transfers for dark shirts. So the code to be cracked is lights and darks both, as well as cotton, 100% cotton all the way down to blends, all the way down to 100% polyester. Well, guess what? Code is cracked. That's what direct-to-film and hybrid digital transfers are. And first thing I want to do is I actually want to talk about DTF, or direct-to-film transfers. I remember the first time I heard about this technology as I got a email from a good friend, Mark Heiss, at Yellow Springer, and he said, "Hey, what do you know about DTF?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "Direct-to-film transfers." I had to email him back, and I said, "I know nothing." And so I immediately got on YouTube, and there's some videos on it. I think this would have been the summer of 2020, and I know it was. And we had a correspondence, and I actually decided to call him. And he said, "Yeah, I'm buying one of these printers. This thing's coming in." And so Mark bought kind of an early adopter, bought a direct-to-film printer. And I was kind of skeptical about the whole thing until he started sending me transfers and some finished product. And I was like, wow, this is really impressive. Like, I was kind of blown away by it. And the machine that he bought was, this is the setup he bought, this Pantheris, or what is it? It's this one right here. So this is the exact setup that he bought. So he rolled the dice and spent $23,000. And what you're seeing is two basically components to a direct-to-film transfer system. Component number one is a solvent inkjet printer, meaning it's not a water-based ink. It's based on oil-based chemistry or solvent-based chemistry. This particular printer is capable of printing CMYK inks, plus I believe it has 2 carts of white. And then the next thing you see over here is everybody calls these things something different. So some people call it a coating unit, some people call it a shaker, hot melt. There's quite a few different things that they're calling these. Powder application machine, a PAM is what they're calling it. And so how does this work? Well, you have a PET material, which is a plasticized material, and it's actually got a little bit of coating on it, and that's loaded up in the printer. And then the printer prints the color first, and they print it in reverse order. So it's kind of like a mirror image when they print the color. So they print the color first, and then what happens is the printer basically either sucks the vinyl back in and prints the white, or some of them print the white on the fly. It just depends on the printer. But it prints a white down, which is an underbase. And that white has to be slightly tacky, not 100% cured when it goes through the coating unit, because there's a powder coating, a hot melt powder that has to adhere to the wet, semi-wet part of the transfer. So it makes it susceptible to humidity. And we'll talk about that in a second. So the powder coating machine literally shakes the powder on, and it only sticks to the wet part of the transfer. And then it's kind of like a conveyor belt that it comes down here, gets powder coated at the bottom, then it comes back up, goes to this heat curing unit over here, and then rolls up on the other side. And so there's quite a bit going on. And one of the things people don't realize, in order to prime the machine, you got to have, 6 to 12 feet of material just to prime the machine. So you can't just, if you cut this off right here, you still have to get the film out of the machine. So there's always going to be a little bit of waste on the film. And this is, I don't think it's a super high-tech process. I think it's a fairly low-tech process if you look at it. But the net result is you end up with a transfer that can be output onto lights, darks, in some cases polyester, 100% cotton, blends, a really wide variety of substrates. And these transfers, if you've seen a direct-to-film transfer, you know that they have a pretty good hand, that they're bright, the colors are brighter, much brighter than what you can see in screen printing. It actually has a look very similar to screen printing. With that being in mind, if you have a transfer that's a big old kind of a blob, like a big patch, they can get a little bit heavy, but it's certainly not like a roll and print and cut transfer, and there's no weeding. And so, you kind of have the perfect prescription for a great heat transfer. I don't know if there'd be a better way of doing it than direct to film until I heard about Supacolor. And then I was like, whoa. And Supacolor does something totally different. And for quite some time, Supacolor, the technique that they utilized for producing the transfers was kind of mysterious. Nobody really knew how they did it. It's pretty widely known how the Supacolor is producing their transfers now. They don't hide it. They call it a hybrid digital transfer. So they're utilizing a commercial offset printer, which we're going to talk about in a second. It's called a digital offset printer. It's not like an old school Heidelberg with printing. It's still printing plates, but it's all done digitally. And then they're using automated screen printing process to print the underbase. And so you guys all see what a DTF, direct-to-film printing operation looks like. And they all look pretty much the same. Now comes the Supacolor, and I was like, well, how are these any different? Remember I mentioned that Supacolor had kind of kept their technology a little bit secret, kept it out of the marketplace. Well, it's not secret anymore. They promote it as a hybrid digital transfer in a combination of offset printing, digital offset printing, and screen printing here of an HP. This is the new generation HP Indigo printer. I don't know which printer Supacolor is using, but this thing's the size of a small bus. So a bit of a barrier to entry. These HP Indigos, even the old school, kind of the original Indigo printer, is still a printer that's $500,000. And these printers, kind of what they were designed to do. They were designed to print paper in sheets. Here's a classic. This is the indigos that I'm familiar with seeing. This is the one I see all the time. This is a standard printer. So how does this thing work? And it's crazy. So you load paper in it, and you can print all kinds of different paper. This machine's actually developed in Israel, and I believe HP bought an Israeli company out when they decided to put their label on it. And it creates printing plates on the fly. So inside this whole thing is cylindrical. I think of it as a big round drum, and on that round drum, there's plates. So a portion of the drum is dedicated to a plate. The plate's made out of rubber or some kind of a rubber-like material, and it's got an ink pad. So the cylinder goes around and picks up ink on the ink pad, deposits it onto the paper, and then the next revolution, it does the next color, next revolution, the next color. And these things are flying. So if you've ever seen an indigo print, literally there's like 3 sheets of paper coming off there every second. It's like whoop, 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 whoop. It's crazy. And that drum is flying, and it replenishes the ink on the fly. It's crazy. It's completely automated system. It can do not two color, but it can do double sided. It's crazy. So it's probably a little overkill for a heat transfer, but it's very fast, and the quality is better than anything you're going to see on an inkjet. These printers are printing tiny, minuscule dots on top of each other to create all the colors of the rainbow. And one of the other things that they can do is they can print spot colors. So in addition to laying down, like a neon green or apple green is a really hard color to do in screen printing and anything. In order really to print that color, you need to have a color that's pre-mixed to lime green or apple green or fluorescent neon green, whatever you want to call it. You have to have ink that's pre-mixed to that. And so it's already that color to begin with. So like a printer like this can lay down just a spot color of green. And they can also lay down metallic inks, which is amazing. And so, what Supacolor did is they figured out a way to print the colored portion of these transfers to a Mylar film, it's not Mylar, it's PET film, just like you're doing with direct-to-garment. But instead of using an inkjet or even this printer, because this printer can't print white, instead of using an inkjet or the HP printer to print the white, they screen print the white. And there's a big advantage in doing that. And the advantage of screen printing the white is they can vary the chemistry of the underbase, that white underbase, based on the type of material you're going to print on. So you'll notice when you order from Supacolor that they're always going to have, there's always going to be, you have to pick the type of transfer based on the type of printing you're doing. If you're doing polyester or nylon or 100% cotton, there's different transfers, and they all have kind of different properties and feels. But this is a big deal. If you want to do a little bit of research, there's Google videos showing how these printers actually print, the mechanics of them. Super impressive. So to get a production line in place to print one production line of transfers this is a $500,000 printer, and the automated screen printing machine that screen prints the underbase, rolls up into the curing unit, our powder coats it, rolls up into the curing unit, and spits out the transfer. That's another $500,000 or $600,000. So you have at the minimum of $1 million of equipment to do these production lines. And Supacolor now has production lines all around the U.S. They did that so they'd have quick turnaround shipping. So they have a very automated production system. Brett Sands, who's their production manager, him and I have gotten to be pretty chummy, and I interviewed him I was doing a video authoring on art prep for hybrid digital and DTF, and I interviewed him, and it was a remarkable experience. And kind of what they discovered, that having kind of pods of printers set up around the U.S. instead of big facilities with many printers, this is kind of a smarter way of doing it. And so they can produce small orders, 20 transfers at a time, very quickly. And so you have that lead time. So I feel like you can build an entire business around these hybrid digital transfers, or a transfer that's direct to film if you're ordering out. And you'll notice one thing in common: all of the big heat transfer companies now, the only one I don't think has direct to film yet quite is FM Expressions. Maybe they do now. Talked to the production manager from them a while back, but Howard does it now. I see that 613 Originals has one. Stalls and Transfer Express were certainly one of the innovators in this. I believe they have a production line of hybrid digital now, not just their traditional direct-to-film solvent inkjet. So yeah, it's just taking over, and it's pretty much going to be the standard way that heat transfers are done. And like anything else that's new technology, you'll see the prices of the transfers come down. I don't think you'll see the prices of the printers go up. I honestly think it'll go the other way as they get more high-tech and sophisticated. But don't be surprised if you see Roland following suit and Muto following suit. Maybe even, HP's already in the business, so I don't think they have a big motivation to do. But our Brother, that'd be another one I would look at. So with that being said, the kind of third way that people are making these transfers is using a direct-to-garment printer. And, if you're doing these transfers with the direct-to-garment printer, guess what you don't have to do? You don't have to have pre-treat, because it's all handled in the ink chemistry. And it was interesting. The company will remain nameless, but I heard a really interesting story from one of my friends that's in the DTG printing business. And he said the printing manufacturer that they represented sent out a memo. It was probably about 18 months ago. And they said, listen, do not sell our DTG printers as direct-to-film printers. You are not permitted to sell them for that purpose. You are not permitted to sell supplies used in our printers in any way facilitate the use of our printer for direct-to-film. Wild, okay? He said 90 days later, they came out with their own set of consumables and supplies. They changed their RIP software so it could reverse the print order, and they started marketing their printers as a hybrid printer. And you've seen I think all of the DTG printer people do that, because a DTG printer can certainly print onto the film just like it was a t-shirt. If you have a RIP software that can reverse the ink order and lay the white down last, normally on a t-shirt, the white's laid down first and the color's put on it. So you have to have software to reverse the print order. And it comes out wet and it goes into a coating unit. Guess what? You can use a DTG printer to make direct-to-film transfers. Okay, is that a great idea? Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think having a machine that can do both is awesome. But from a production point of view, it's slow, because you still have to have a human being, loading up the machine one sheet at a time. Now, maybe we'll see somebody come up with a kind of an auto feeder that will do an automated system that will use a DTG printer to do roll fed. Maybe we'll see that. That would be awesome. I'm sure somebody's working on it. Maybe they've already hit market with it. But until then, it's a pretty pokey, slow way to do it. So to me, it feels like it's kind of like, by the way, my direct-to-garment printer can also make direct-to-film transfers. So where's that an advantage for you? So here's where that's a huge advantage. So if you have an event and you're not sure what the sizes and quantities or colors are, you could use your direct-to-garment printer to print up a whole bunch of transfers in advance of the event, and then you just do pressing at the event. If you're doing a print-on-demand business and you have a website and customers are going to the website and just, picking, designs and making purchases kind of on the go, you could cook up a bunch of transfers and just press as needed. Mark Heiss from Yellow Springer, the way he does his web stores, and bear in mind, he's got a dedicated direct-to-film printer, is the way he does his web stores is just that. He spruced up the old web store. Look at this. Looking good, Mark. Very nice. Very cool. That's definitely Morgan, his daughter, behind that. She's very creative. So let's go to one of his web stores. And he kind of hid the public stores. That's actually smart to do that. But he stocks these transfers, and he'll just print, transfer until he runs out of transfers. Then he'll replenish the transfers. So literally everything he does is on direct-to-film transfers that he produces. He also does embroidery. They're not really doing any screen printing. So that brings me to another kind of general observation about direct-to-film and DTG printing, which is, to me, very interesting. So I come from the background of what we call screen printing simulated process screen printing. So process screen printing is, the process screen printing is using the 4 process colors, which are cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Okay, so that's process screen printing. Simulated process printing allows us to create like full color images with the pretty wide color gamut, but instead of using, 4 color CMYK, they're actually utilizing other colors. Usually about 8 colors is the typical thing. And so to do skin tones, they might be actually using a special spot color just to do skin tones. And so and it's a very complex process of doing the color separations. It really needs a lot of expertise. Most people do the color separations either manually in Photoshop, or they use a product from like, if you go to screenprinting.com right here, great company, and they have their own little software for process printing. I'm sure if we go over here, this is Ryanet's website. I'm sure they have a link to the software for doing film separations, and somewhere in here. But it's quite a process. Like it's just not an easy thing to do, and it requires a lot of expertise. And so it's kind of a pain, right? But if you look at NASCAR shirts or a lot of the concert shirts or things that you're seeing, all that photographic quality imagery is being produced on, simulated process. So usually 8 screens, very complex type of printing, pretty high spoilage rate, requires a tremendous amount of expertise to do it. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And so the net result of that is really that's the only way to do like photographic type images on for screen print. So I'll show you a typical example. See if I can. I should be able to find this in my GraphicsFlow account, as I believe I uploaded the artwork. This is the trade show shirt that we did for, was it in here? And hold on. It's probably in here. And this is a set of graphics that we did for the trade show in, let's see, I know I uploaded it in here. Sure. It's not that. You'd think I would have keyworded it so we could find it real easy. But we did a design. It was kind of like a NASCAR shirt design, and I have the design so I can find it, but I thought I uploaded it in here. I believe I did. I'm sure it's in here somewhere. Indie Trade Show, Inktobo shirts. There we go. All right. So this is the design that we did. This would normally be printed using simulated process printing. And so for the trade show, we took this design. We were going to get transfers from Supacolor. And so in the meantime, we were worried about being able to get the shirts done in time. And my coworker decided, hey, we're just gonna screen print a bunch of these shirts just in case. We're not gonna wait for the heat transfers to come in. And so they did. They screen printed these, and they had it professionally color separated. The folks over at, I believe at Graphics Source did the color separations. They do a brilliant job. The shirts look pretty good. Like, I was pretty happy with the way it turned out. They had to make some modifications and adjustments in the artwork to make it work, because we didn't use a t-shirt designer to do this. We used just a general graphic designer that didn't know anything about setting up art for t-shirts, but they made it work, and it turned out really well. And the images were fairly clear. It looked like your typical NASCAR shirt. Well, in the meantime, I ordered transfers from Supacolor, and I sent this file over to Supacolor, and they said, hey, listen, there's some things in this image that aren't going to work for your transfers. You can't have these fuzzy edges in here. We have to lay white ink under all of this, and we can't really do that with a halftone, so you guys got to fix the art. And I said, hey, listen, we just don't really have time to fix it. Could you guys fix it for us? And they're like, yeah, sure, we do that, no problem. So they fixed the art, and we did heat transfers. And so all the shirts we were wearing at the show had this on the back in a simulated process print, and then just had our company logo on the front. They look good. But then the transfers came in from Supacolor, and they literally knocked everybody's socks off. They were so much brighter. The image was crisper. They just looked absolutely amazing. And we just gave these shirts out. We had blank shirts there. We gave people a shirt. We gave them a transfer. We sent them over to Supacolor. They pressed the shirts. It was a big hit. So where am I headed with this? Here's where I'm headed. So I have a friend that's in the business of doing simulated process separations. This guy makes a living, does simulated process separations for some of the biggest retail brands in the US, including people like Walmart, right? And so I asked him, do you think that these direct-to-film and hybrid transfers are going to impact the simulated process business? And he said, no, I don't really think so. And I go, you're wrong. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, the reason that business exists is because it's the only way to produce photographics type images, these high color images in screen printing. There's no other way to do it. So that's where it exists. It's not because the customers prefer the way it looks. Customers prefer the more realistic looking graphics with all the bright, vibrant colors and the fine line detail and all of. They just prefer that. And I know that for a fact because I'm just my experience at the trade show, seeing people compare our shirt that's screen printed to the one that was done on the transfer. And I said, I think what you're going to see is more people going to this digital transfer printing process for their color stuff, especially on small orders. It probably won't impact like the really big giant orders, but certainly on smaller orders, under 144 pieces, I think you're going to see people doing a lot more transfers. And that's been my experience. It's really displacing a lot of that simulated process business. And I had a client that's a good client of ours in Mississippi, and it was really interesting. I was talking to him, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about buying a direct-to-film printer." I was like, "Okay." And I said, why is that? He said, well, here's the issue. He says, we're a screen printer. We've got automatic screen printing equipment. We can do that stuff all day long. But the thing is, I started ordering direct-to-film transfers in, and they look really good. And on our smaller orders, it just makes so much more sense to do the direct-to-film transfers. And frankly, they just wash better than the screen print. It says, but then what happened is I ordered Supacolor transfers in, and everybody liked the Supacolor transfers way better than the standard direct-to-film transfers. And says they cost me a little bit more, but at the end of the day, people prefer this. So I said, why aren't you going to get a direct-to-film printer? And he says, because the Supacolor transfers are so much better looking, and I can't afford to do a production line what Supacolor is doing. I says, I think I'm just going to continue buying in transfers. They can turn an order in less than 5 days, and I can do 20 pieces if I want. And this is before they started doing gang sheets, which we'll talk about in a second. But it just, as a commercial screen printer and somebody that's doing, he just signed up for Inksoft yesterday, actually. But as somebody that's doing a lot of, automatic press simulated process, he's not really having to do that as much because it just makes more sense for him to order Supacolor transfers. And I was really impressed by that. I was like, wow, I never really thought about that comparing a traditional DTF transfer next to a Supacolor transfer, and maybe DTF transfers have gotten better, but from my experience, the Supacolor transfers they're brighter, they have more detail, they just look amazing. They're pretty remarkable, and maybe some of you have had that same experience. So the nuance here, what you see on this graphics is it was the set of instructions I would have had to have given back to our vendor to fix the artwork. We were using a non-t-shirt designer, freelance graphic designer to do this. And here's the irony of ironies. Kevin Truex Jr. was in our booth at the impression show. So he was actually, the folks at Rock who we were co-exhibiting with paid him to come and hang out with us. And he was literally 10 feet away from me for a whole day. And it would have been kind of cool to use his car and his number. And we kind of missed the boat on that. Not even the right number. So maybe a little bit of forethought would have helped us coordinate with that. And maybe you'd have to have permission from his agent or license. Who knows? Maybe that's what we do. But with that being said, having the ability to do these full color transfers with bright, vibrant colors or even photos is a pretty transformational thing in our industry, especially since you can do it on lights and darks, polyester, blends, all that stuff. So let me kind of zip over to the Supacolor website and talk a little bit about kind of how they do things. And I'm on their site right now. And if you go to their site and you don't know anything about them and you want to get set up with them, do this. Just go to the little Get Started button, order a sample kit. They'll let you sign up for your account. If you haven't signed up, we don't get a piece of the action from them, but they do like to know where, people find out about us. So when you're doing this, there's a, choose your how did you find out about us thing here, select us in the little list. So we're in here, Printavo GraphicsFlow right in here. So select us from the list when you fill it out, because that way they can, see where the origin of our activities have helped them. So when you're on their website, you're going to see all these different types of transfers, and there's different transfers based on the kind of the substrate. And you'll notice like they actually have a special transfer for headwear. So if you're doing transfers for headwear, it can bridge the seams without cracking, which is a big deal. So they have some more elasticity built into the underbase, so it can split the seam. That's the advantage of a directive film or of a hybrid transfer of directive films. They're changing that underbase chemistry, so it's a little bit flex has a little bit more flex to it. And on a cap, you don't need to have that softer hand, so you can use a little bit thicker underbase that has some elasticity to it, and you can flex across the seam of a 6-panel hat. So transfer. Let's see here. Let's go back over here. Your standard wearable transfers, these are the ones that we order, and we order these transfers for all of our promotional wear. It's just easy. Guess who gets to do all the pressing? I do. Because I'm the one that has the heat press. So I get to do all the pressing, and I joked about this in the webcast the other day. Next time I have to do a bunch of pressing for our trade show shirts, I'm going to move the press into the kitchen. I'm not going to do it in our steamy garage. So the heat transfer instructions, they've got great resources and YouTube videos, but these are pressing at like 320 degrees for 10 to 15 seconds. You use a pretty high pressure and you peel it hot. Like literally as soon as the press pops up, you start peeling. And no cracking or fading. These do not fade at all. Like I look at the trade show shows that I printed and I wear them all the time. They don't fade. My screen print on my shirt right here is absolutely, I wear this shirt probably 30 times a year, and it is destroyed with cracking, and which is fine because it has that kind of vintage look to it now, naturally aged. But you're not going to see that on one of these Supacolor transfers. And they have design templates that are to size, and because they're printing on the digital offset printer, they're all in kind of standard Euro sizes. So little small transfer, 8.5, 5.8 by 8.3, which is A5, A4, which is your European equivalent of like 8.5 by 11, and then 11 by 7 by 16, which is close to tabloid size in English units of measurement. So you pick the transfer template, and you download the transfer template in a variety of formats, and you use that to lay your graphic out. And you can go right edge to edge. It's crazy. So the template, you go right to the edge. So we talked about that particular transfer. Let's talk about some of the other ones. Soft shell blocker, for soft shell garments that require a blocker to stop dye migration. So this is going to be things like Polar Tech fleece, things of that nature. So it has dye migration is when when you heat the substrate, the dye comes up through the transfer and changes the color. So white becomes pink, not great. And so this is a specialized blocker for soft shell materials that are not Polar Tech fleece, but these soft shell, if it's a polyester material you used to do jackets. So soft shell is mostly going to be jackets with this soft shell material, but this is their sublimation blocker for that. And then they also have just like regular blocker. This is kind of your athletic uniforms. So really super cool way to do unis and to do numbering on unis. Let's say you're getting tees pre-sublimated, like this t-shirt that you see right here. This subla blocker will prevent any of the dye coming through that polyester t-shirt material and turn in your white letters pink. And so it is a heavier hand. So it's slightly thicker. It's a different ink chemistry on the underbase and possibly even on the transfer ink. But it's amazing because whites look white. So if you're doing baseball jerseys, football jerseys, and you're dropping numbers in there, it's super awesome material. And then let's see, last promotional, I think this is their budget transfer. Oh, promotional items. So this is the one that would go on nylon or Cordura. It'll go on 600D polyester and ripstop nylon. So this is their nylon material. That's right. And so, yeah, you can do transfers on sneakers if you want to. Go on leather if you want to. So this is for promotional items. And then last is Supagang, which is what we do. So Supagang is when we order transfers, you pick the transfer sheet, and as much as you can fit, you can print. So when I did, let's see if I can show you what I did when we place our orders. Let's see if I've got our transfers. I'm going to turn my mug on here so you can kind of see I'm going to turn off my mug so you can see me see this kind of full screen. And I think these are the shirts that I did. Yeah. So here is my gang sheet. Here's all my gang sheets right here. So this is what I ordered for us. And gang sheets is a game changer. And many of you are already doing gang sheets if you use Transfer Express or literally any of the big heat transfer companies have the ability to do gang sheets now. And the concept here is if it fits, it prints. And so it depends on how much scissoring you want to do with scissors to cut around them. And when you see the graphic, you'll understand that in a second. I laid these out. I could have squeezed more transfers onto here, but I laid these out purposely so they were easy to cut with scissors. And so this is what we're utilizing for our trade show uniforms. And it was just a really clever, easy way to do it. And so I set up this design so that it has a full back print. And I also set it up so that the print had a left chest version and a center front kind of a patch version. And then I threw a couple logos on there if we just want to do logos. And I use that logo for my full back or my backdrop for my webcam. So when I'm doing classes. So here, without further ado, is our gang sheet. It's really exciting. And then I'll show you the graphic we did for the indie show as well. So all I really had to do is just, I picked their templates. I downloaded their template, which is an A3 template. I created the colored background. I locked the background so they can't accidentally print it. They know not to print the navy, by the way, but you put that in the instructions when you place the order. But you can, in Corel, you can go in here and lock the background. And so you can just go over here and say lock so it doesn't actually accidentally print. But the reason I have to do that because it's got white in the graphic. So center front transfer, pocket transfer, just a big old logo for the front. And then this whole part down here, this is what we did on the back of our shirts. And that's just a really clever way to do it. And so if you're talking about you're working with the customer and, you can certainly set up a gang sheet like this. And here's a good example. You're doing a family reunion. You could do an adult design on the front for half the sheet, and then maybe now the bottom part of the sheet do a youth design, gang 2 up, and then the excess space, maybe you put some pocket designs in there. The other thing that you can do utilizing transfers, which I think is really smart, is when you're working with this isn't a new idea, but it's a great idea. And I'll share this with you, and you've probably heard me talk about this in the past. But one of the things that you can do is you can talk to your client and get a deposit. You say, hey, listen, we're going to order in 100 transfers. I need to get a deposit of $300 to order in these transfers. The only thing you're really responsible for is the 100 transfers. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up a web store for you. And as the products are made, I'm going to pull a transfer out and print the shirt. And then you're either going to, do that once every week and then do it in bulk, or do it as you go and maybe even drop ship to the customers. That's what Mark does. And you have zero financial risk. They're basically prepaying for the transfers and drawing against those transfers. And as soon as the transfers are used up or get down to a minimum order quantity, maybe they get down to 20, ping the customer and say, hey, listen, would you want to order in another 100 transfers? Yeah, sure. Charge them another deposit. So just a super smart way to deal with customers. So with this being said, these Supacolor transfers are a premium decoration process. You can absolutely, within 100% confidence, say better than screen printing. They are absolutely better than screen printing. They wash better. They look better. They are just better. And the shirts that I have that I've done with these transfers just look amazing. The white is white. They're not cracking. I don't have to worry. The shirt's going to wear out before the transfer does. And so you can go to your customer and say, hey, listen, this new transfer technology, digital transfer technology we're using, it's better than screen printing. So where is it slightly problematic? Where it's slightly problematic is where you have things like this, where you have a big fill area of ink, especially white, because they're having to lay down quite a bit of white. They're laying quite a bit of white down when they screen print this. It's going to be a little bit heavier. It's probably going to be slightly heavier than a screen print, but it is not going to crack or fade. And so that's the, kind of the disadvantage when you have big filled in areas and things like this. The way I set this transfer up, this is negative space where the shirt's coming through, and so is that. So you have to be kind of cognizant of that when you set up the transfer. So let me show you the designs that I set up and did for the trade show I'm sure I've got them in my art and logos folder. Just got done reorganizing all my content and uploading all the things to GraphicsFlow that I use pretty frequently. And is this the shirts we did for the show? No, it's not that one. And I did two different concepts, so to speak. Here's the gang sheet on one. And the weathered effect on this turned out absolutely amazing. Like, I was shocked that they could pull it off. So here's the transfer we did for the show. Another thing they did, they didn't need to cut these for me. They actually cut these into multiple transfers. I thought I was getting a sheet, but they actually cut these. And I really intended to give the customer one sheet. And then say have both transfers, but they cut them. So I just gave people choose what they wanted. But the weather effect turned out amazing. And then I put their branding on there. And then this little QR code went to a little landing page where people could download a little graphics kit and some educational materials from my class in Indy, as well as get signed up with Supacolor. So a really great little fundraiser. And what we're going to do at the next show is we have a new corporate mascot that we'll introduce, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's pretty cool. And we're going to do kind of generic Inktobo shirts with our corporate mascot, and then we'll wear those for the show, and then we'll make up extras with the same kind of QR code campaign to hand out to you guys, because we're going to be doing the Graphics Pro show in both Portland as well as in Long Beach coming up here in July and August. So the flexibility that this gave us, there's only one drawback to this, in my opinion, is that I'm the guy with the heat press. So I get to do all the pressing. But other than that, this is absolutely a brilliant way to do our corporate apparel. And you notice there's actually, with this design, it's actually two designs. We did this design as a standalone, and then I made this patch layout. And part of what I was trying to illustrate was that, when you're doing corporate type work, you don't have to just do the boring, here's the template right here that I started with. You don't have to do boring corporate logo stuff. We wanted, I hate it when we do like just our logo. It's just so boring. It's so much more fun to have something that's built around a graphic. So I went and found a skyline of Indy, and I had to go in and I vectorized it as a bitmap, and then I had to go in and clean some. That's the Salesforce building there. We just migrated to Salesforce as of today. It's pretty wild. And I just wanted to create something fun for the show, and I used Indiana Pacers colors. It's kind of fun. Then I did a version for dark where the white this part is knocked out. And then I did one with the weathered effect, and then we did the patch layout. So, all the flexibility that we had, if we were getting these screen printed for the shows, I would have never had the flexibility to do multiple designs. I can do, on my gang sheet, I can do the version for lights and darks on the same gang sheet, which is actually what we did, because they printed these too. We had 400 transfers at the show. It was wild. So the whole way that these hybrid digital transfers and DTF transfers are transforming the industry is as follows. You have a more durable transfer than screen printing. You have the flexibility of doing gang sheets. You have competitive pricing, low minimums, the abilities to do lights as well as darks, and the abilities to do just about any substrate, from nylon or Cordura backpacks to seamed 6-panel caps to sublimated 100% polyester to 100% cotton plus blends. That's what's changing our industry. Are we going to get to the point where everybody has a direct-to-film printer? I don't think so, because I think with the ability to do these quick turns on the transfers, I think that, if you can turn a transfer in, 5 to 7 days, you have a little bit of foresight, and a minimum order quantity of 20 units. Do you really need to own a printer? If you're doing big volume production and you're doing like what Mark does, where you're constantly doing, ganging up multiple jobs, and his printer is literally printing dawn to dusk, then having a printer probably makes a lot of sense. But it's a piece of technology that I feel like is just transforming what we do. And, I don't know how you guys feel. I have a vinyl cutter. I do shirts here for myself, one-offs for myself all the time. I don't much care for weeding, but I'm doing one-offs, right? Or doing 1 or 2. So it still makes sense for me to utilize the cutter for that. But bear in mind, it's a one-color transfer, and it's pretty heavy compared to a direct-to-film transfer. But, that sweet spot of 20 units to, infinity is where you're going to be really well suited with direct-to-film. Now, I want to talk a little bit about art preparation for direct-to-film. It's not super complicated, but the one thing that I will say about Supacolor that's super impressive to me, and I learned this no pun intended, I learned this when I talked to Brett Sands, who's the production manager over there, is they're not there to punish you. And I have experienced this ordering transfers from other companies, is that I feel like I'm guilty of something when I, process my order and upload my art. Like, I teach this for a living. I know how to prep art, but it's almost like they shame me and say, well, you didn't do this right, and this line thickness is incorrect, and you didn't use the right color palette in Corel Draw, and, all this stuff. And they bounce it back to me. And then, or they'll say, hey, listen, we can fix this, but we got to charge you $50. It's like a little profit center. And it seems like with a lot of the heat transfer companies, their order processing system, it really feels like it's designed to make it easy for their production unit versus making it easy to you as a consumer. That's the way it really feels. And having processed quite a few orders now through Supacolor, it's not that way. If I screw the artwork up and they can fix it, they'll just fix it. And when I was talking to Brett about this, he just said, our job isn't, first thing I tell our artists when they sign on, and they pre-flight every design, and a lot of times they're fixing these designs and you don't even know about it. He says, I tell our team, it's like, you're not there to punish customers. You're there to make them happy. And that is such a refreshing, it very much aligns with the way that I like to see things. So I'm recording a video for them on their metallics, and I'll share a couple things here on this. Let's see, I've got a little folder, I believe. Yeah, here we go. And so art specs. So you can download this from their website, but they shared their general art specs and kind of what they're looking for. And it's not super complicated. We use the word super probably a little bit too much, but they prefer to have CMYK colors. All of the transfer companies would prefer to have CMYK colors because their printers are printing with CMYK. So if you have RGB and you have to convert to CMYK, the colors are going to look different. They're going to be not as bright. So you should always be designing in CMYK. Avoid thin, free floating lines. And what they're meaning is, if they take this white and they put it on a black dot, even though it's a super thin line, it'll show up. But if they just put it straight onto the substrate, they're trying to get a white underbase under there, there's a good possibility it's going to start to kind of disappear a little bit. So they want anything under 0.2 millimeters or 1 point they have to have the lines thickened up a little bit, so you can add a outline stroke to that. They want everything at full opacity. So like this design has a little fuzzy edge around it. That's a no-go for direct-to-film, because they have to put white underbase underneath that. So they want it full opacity, not these blended translucent like drop shadows. They want text converted to curves or to outlines is the other way that's described, meaning, you're going to send them a PDF file. So if you're in Corel and you send a PDF file over, what you're going to want to do, you don't have to convert the text to curves in the graphic. You can just go to publish to PDF, and in your PDF settings, you can just go over here to settings, and under Objects, just click on Export Text as Curves, and I'll do it just on the PDF file. Using Adobe Illustrator, you want to convert text to outlines in the graphic, and I would save a copy of the graphic in outlines versus a copy of the graphic that's still got live text, because once you convert that to outlines, it's outlines forever. So let's see here. Go back to the little instruction sheet. Embed linked images. What they're talking about there is in Adobe Illustrator, it's not really a Corel thing, but in Illustrator or Photoshop, you can have an image sitting in a folder, and you can tell Adobe Illustrator to link to that image, and it will populate it in the graphic, even though it's not in the graphic itself. And so people will do that to kind of keep file sizes done, or if they're using the same image over and over again. That's not going to work for a transfer when you send it in. That file has to be actually embedded into the document. And so in Illustrator, there's a way to kind of move it from the folder so it's actually part of the document. Remove custom spot colors. They do not want any colors in the graphic that are spot colors that are not Pantone solid coded colors. They're going to have to fix that. So you can use Pantone colors, and that's one of the great things about Supacolor is they can match to Pantone solid coded colors. So if you need 123 gold, they can do that. If you try to do that with other manufacturers, they're going to say no. We can't do that. Expand pattern fills. All that means is if you have like a heart and you have little stars going around the heart because you've set up a pattern fill with stars, if you blow that heart up down in Adobe Illustrator, the stars will move around on that. And so if you use the expand function in Illustrator, it will lock those stars. In CorelDRAW, you don't have to do that because you're using power clipping, and it will just scale. They also are saying raster specifics, always use a transparent background. Don't send in JPEG files, send in PNG files, and make sure you select transparent background when you save them out of your program, which is usually a default. And then high resolution images. And when I was talking to Brett, he says the biggest issue they have is people sending in low resolution images. And that's the one circumstance in which sometimes they'll have to kick the artwork back to the user and say, hey, it's just too low res to print. They have tools that will allow them to clean up low resolution images, or in some cases, they'll redraw them into vector. But you want to have something in the 300 DPI range of really nice clean edges if the artwork isn't vector, if it's, photographic in nature. So that's basically it. So from a point of view of GraphicsFlow and downloading your templates, just download our PDF templates. They're literally ready to go. And the formats that they accept are Adobe Illustrator, EPS, PDF, Photoshop, PNG, and JPEG. And you've heard me say this before, PDF, 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 always PDF. PDF is your best format. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.